I saw a lot of films about composers, Russian films, Czech films, even a Chinese film. These were the most boring films, boring stories I ever saw.
If one had bought that script to an average studio in Hollywood, or an average producer in Hollywood, and said, would you make this? And he read 10 pages of musical directions, bar 13, clarinet this, bar 25, this.
No one major studio was interested, even after the play opened to rave reviews and great success and everything. Costume movie about a composer.
Well, studios didn't want it. The head of the studio said, geez, he said, oh, costume picture. He says, they really don't do much business, costume pictures.
We did get hate mail.
Only in the cab, I learned that I'm going to see a play about Mozart. Well, if he told me this before, I would probably find an excuse so that I don't have to go.
I was introduced to Milos that evening for the first time, and he was very effusive and warm, and he shook my hand and looked at me, and he said, if the second half of this is as good as the first, I will make a film of it. At the end of the play, second act having been performed, he passed me by on the way up and said, it is as good, and walked straight on.
I'm sitting in the theater and I'm mesmerized. It's a wonderful drama I'm seeing. So, even if it was not about a Mozart and Salieri, it still would be a wonderful story. And I told him, listen, if you will ever consider to make a movie, I would love to make this movie. And he looked at me like, are you serious?
I hadn't enjoyed any film of any of my plays. I didn't like any of them.
2 months later, we met in New York, and we talked and talked and talked and decided to make a movie together.
He didn't in any way pressure me. And in fact, he came clean. He said, if you do this, you will, along the way, dislike the process and be made uncomfortable by it a lot of the time. It's like turning a glove inside out. Everything that worked on the stage almost certainly will not work in a movie.
I told him, look, Peter, you didn't write Amadeus out of thin air. You used Mozart's letters, whatever you can, learn about Mozart, and used it as a springboard for your theatrical vision. So now what we'll have to do, we will have together use your theatrical vision of the story as a springboard to a film vision.
He said, there's a play here that you should see. If you like it, we can do it. We can get the rights to do it. And I said, what play? And he says, Amadeus. And that was one of the 2 plays I was planning to see. And of course, now it's going to be free.
I sent Saul Zaentz, to see the play, because first of all, my experience with him and Michael, on Cuckoo's Nest was wonderful. And secondly, I owed it to him.
I liked the play very much. I really liked the play. And the ideas, I said, the only thing I don't see for a movie is the music. I want to know more about Mozart.
The whole play on the stage is a dialogue between Salieri and God and the audience. You can't do it in the film.
It's a very difficult thing to give birth to the same child twice.
It's very difficult for the authors to, disengage themselves from every word they have written, especially when it was already successful once. And Peter was very courageous.
I went up and stayed in his place for 4 months.
We met like around 10 in the morning here in this room, and he brought pages of what we discussed the day before. We went through that, made corrections, whatever, and then we started to work on the next scenes, discussed it here and there, argued sometimes, very loudly.
We became very much like the odd couple. Milos had a passion for Family Feud, I remember, and I would sort of sit on the sofa thinking, what a very strange thing we're doing watching this ludicrous program.
Around 3, 4 o'clock, he retired in the other house, And then there he wrote and typed everything in a screenplay form. And then we had a nice dinner.
Milos took to calling his home a prison. He said, oh, well, we'd say on Sunday nights, back to prison. And he was right in some way, because we were, both of us, the prisoners, not of each other, but of this shared passion for making this a film.
It was a very, very, very good collaboration.
He's a man of great integrity and immense mental discipline. He holds great chunks of structure in his head simultaneously. And I believe, I got the impression when he directed Amadeus as a movie that he knew the text by heart.
Peter said at the Oscars, when he got an Oscar for it, he said, Milos taught me how to write a screenplay.
Mozart, obviously, must be an unknown, because, first of all, he can't be a leading man, because he was not. He was a short, sort of undescriptive man. If you look at his portraits, everyone looks differently, because there was nothing really very significant in his features, you know. So it was obvious that Mozart will be unknown, and yet everybody knows Mozart.
You know, I was one of the, whatever, 1,000 or, you know, thousands of people who were basically, I guess, put on a list and sat in a little cubicle kind of room with Milos for about 5 minutes.
What he would do is ask for groups of actors to come in and improvise.
Our first meeting, I think I was just a little bit of an asshole.
He would then select from these improvisational gatherings who he wanted, see chemistry and so on. And I refused to do it.
F. Mary Abraham originally was sent by a casting director for, I don't know, some small part in the movie.
I was at a point in my career where I really wanted to make some changes. I didn't want to continue being a supporting actor.
I met with him, and then I read with him this small part, and I realized that he is Salieri.
He, in some way, needs to believe that we are those people.
They called me again and said, he wants to see you for the part. That's what I began to call it, was the part. And I said, well, you got to do this. You got to go in and tape this, because at that point, too, I was gathering a lot of material for my own files. I would audition for just about anything.
This is an actor who is not a teenager anymore, who plays little bits in films here and there, mostly on stage for little money. And he has in himself this kind of a controlled bitterness, which was perfect for Salieri.
He said, you're my first choice. Now, from my point of view, that doesn't pay the rent.
It seemed like I was rehearsing for, auditioning for about a year. Every couple months, I'd have another audition.
It was a very long process. And then they asked me to come back again, and I said no. I felt that I couldn't give them more information that would be in my best interest, and so I said no, and the next day they offered me the job.
In my opinion, who is the best for the part should get the role.
Well, there it is.
Jeff Jones, I think, gives the perfect performance in that movie.
There are these noble people, and there are these common people. So the common people, if they speak American accent, that's fine. The noble people, let them speak, a little bit British. So I was sure that the emperor I will find in England. And I had like 2 or 3 brilliant actors in England. And then Jeffrey Jones came. The first was striking his resemblance to Joseph.
I was introduced to Mirak, and he said, Jeffrey, come. And we went into this other room, and he pointed to this painting on the wall, and he said, "It's you." And I looked at it, and it looked exactly like me. And it was a painting of Emperor Joseph II. Well, there it is.
In order simply not to be quoted all the time, he had to devise an expression which meant nothing at all.
And the Milos was actually borrowed from an actual studio executive.
Simon Callow plays Schikaneder, the actor.
I think Simon was the best Mozart I saw on the stage. Excellent actors, playing a certain role on the stage. If they are then asked to play the same role on the film, they can't get out of their blood a certain theatricality. It's even subconsciously in them. You know, it's just... So I asked him to play Schikaneder. And I must tell you, I was very impressed that, you know, of course, I will play Schikaneder, and he was wonderful.
Meg Tilly was cast as Mozart's wife. And the day before shooting started,
She tore ligaments in her heels and had to undergo operation, and the doctors told us that she has to be in bed for several weeks, and we couldn't wait.
Saturday morning, we caught the Concorde to New York, and over the weekend, we saw 66 or 67 girls.
Meg Tilly would be equally wonderful, but it would be different Constanza. It would be romantic Constanza. While Elizabeth Berridge is much more real. It's much closer to the truth. Because Constanza, she was a landlady's daughter. She was a street kid, you know, street smart kid. And I think, you know, Elizabeth is wonderful, wonderful in the film. When you cast right, you don't have to talk to actors anymore. They are always giving you better than you can imagine.
Stanzi. Stanzi, marini, bini, gini. Mouth. Mouth, mouth. It's Wuss-Wuss. Wuss-Wuss is back. What is it? What's the matter? Stanzi, stop it. Stop it. What is it? Tell me.
You know, he is doing Don Giovanni, so what the hell? Finally, one fireman shyly stuck out his head out of the wings, saying, Mr. Forman, would you be so very kind? Can you stop the camera? One of your actors is on fire.
The play didn't have 9 minutes of music, and yet you felt, because it was so well written, that there were music all the way through it.
On a stage, you play any music for more than 30 seconds or 45 seconds, and it turns into a concert.
In the film, we have over 100 minutes of music.
Cinema accommodates music very well. The problem is to make it the subject of the audience's attention.
I felt the music drove the film.
We asked 4 different people associated with classical music, players, conductors.
Who is the best conductor in the world interpreting Mozart?
Marriner was the only name that was on all 4 lists.
They invited me by post or by telephone to talk about it, and the only time we could meet was in a limousine between 2 airports.
He said, well, I'll do it under one condition only, that not one note of Mozart will be changed. All right. And that's how it was.
The great thing about Mozart is here you have more than 600 choices. You know, he had all this work available to you.
We decided very early on was that we would not repeat anything unless Mozart was composing it.
Peter arrived fully armed, really, with what he would want.
The music, once finished, would be played in large sections and respected as the leading character.
Milos, of course, at the beginning of the film was not a very experienced musician or musicologist, and we as performers obviously felt that certain things would work and certain things wouldn't work. So we all went down to the country, we stayed together for a few days and thrashed it out.
We used to talk a lot about the music, and I wanted it to be not background music in any sense, but frontground music.
For instance, when Salieri is looking at the scores that Mozart's wife has brought him to see, and one
seemed absolutely meaningless.
Oh, I do apologize for this afternoon. I behaved like a silly girl. Oh, I love these candlesticks. Were these here earlier? Because I didn't notice them. I suppose I was too nervous. Wolfgang was given a set of candlesticks once by King George in England. But those were only wood. Oh, I'm sorry. Let's not talk about him. What do you think of this? It's real lace. Brussels. Well, it's much too good for every day. I keep saying to Wolfie, don't be so extravagant. Presents are lovely, but we can't afford them. Doesn't do any good, though. The more I talk, the more he spends. Oh, I'm sorry. There I go again.
Milos and I both agreed that we wanted to discard that because it was almost impossible to argue that this was a man of virtue when he's chasing around the furniture naked. It didn't make any sense. Salieri's whole point is that he was a man of hardworking, obeying Christian principles, behaving, leading a life of virtue, and God rewarded him with nothing.
The thing about playing a character like Salieri is people suggest that you have to know something about envy and malice before you can play it. Not true. If you feel that you are second best, which is what Salieri feels, you can never play that kind of character the way I played it, or the way it should be played. You can't play a character who is going to have a fight with God, who thinks he's second to anyone.
He wanted someone who he could believe could have created this exquisite music, and he was, I guess, willing to make that leap in my direction.
It was a very demanding role technically because he had to learn to play piano.
They set me up with a piano teacher who worked with me 4 hours a day.
When Tom suddenly realized how critical it was that he was a plausible pianist, he took it immensely seriously.
I had a practice room where I had my piano, which oddly enough was right over the room where Milos hung out. The one day he made a comment about that I was improving was the day that my teacher was demonstrating to me.
He did everything very accurately, including the tricky ones, you know, where he has to stay upside down.
There was just no way to be able to do that without being able to do it because I did to play. So the only music that was coming was the pre-recorded music, and it felt sort of dead to me. And also, someone over there had missed their entrance. And so I got my translator, and I asked him to communicate to the musician that they had missed their entrance on bar whatever. And I thought, you know, this is either going to put me out or put me in. And, you know, you see this ripple, and you see, like, everybody's eyes change and stuff. And they loved the fact that I had done my homework. And so then, from then on, they played full out.
I wanted to learn the very basic way to do a strict conducting move, that's all. Even when it got passionate, I wanted to be very strict and small, as opposed to the way Mozart conducts, at least the way Tom interpreted it, which was huge and very passionate. I kept trying to make sure there was a balance between his exuberance and me, a controlled, manipulative man. And that comes through in the performance as well, I think. Even though I'm Italian, I keep all that stuff controlled, very constant.
Among the many things that I like about Milos is that he is very clear about what he wants, and he doesn't waste a lot of words to describe it.
He has a certain abrupt quality that you know, some actors I think find abrasive.
I think that Murray had some difficulty sometimes in dealing with Milos's choice of words.
He has a proclivity to demonstrate, but in a kind of silent film style.
What I am doing, which is not always welcomed by the actors, I parody him.
He would say, and then you come up the stairs and then you see your father.
I remember him saying to Murray once, Murray, you're walking like you got pants full of shit.
Some actors, you know, feel a little, you know, offended by that.
Well, do the old man.
F. Murray was wonderful.
What are you doing?
Let me tell you how he directs. Very different from Brian De Palma. He sits as close to the camera as he can.
His concentration would be so much on where he was looking that people would have to make certain that he wouldn't fall over things.
And in a way, I began to try to give him the very best I could.
He's right. The whole authenticity of the film depends on details. Every detail has to be right.
I have a base of fact in many of the scenes, most of the scenes.
His only desire is to be an actor, you know. So I said, all right. And he had this, you know, beautiful German accent, you know, and he's a little sort of, you know, like that.
This is funny.
It was his little reward for 6 months of intensive labor and bending hair.
Ten jistý úspěch, který třeba ty kostýmy dosáhly jenom proto, že jsem...
I think the costumes in the film succeeded because I had a hard head. When I didn't like something, I had it redone again and again until it was right.
To nejde nikdy.
I started to appreciate the art of a costume designer on this film.
Theo and I traveled to Rome together very early on, and we were able to choose fabrics together, so there was a kind of cohesiveness in the schemes.
I take my inspiration from paintings. For Amadeus, this meant a close acquaintance with Watteau and Fragonard, who were painters of the late Rococo. And that was a great experience for me.
They were in the clothes long enough that they were not a costume. They were their own.
Several actors wanted their costumes changed because they were too restrictive. I had to convince them what a big mistake that would be. We don't want to see Jeffrey Jones in the costume of an emperor. He must be the emperor. Once the actors accepted their costume, they became people of the Rococo.
The costumes fit so tightly that they were very, very restrictive in the shoulders, and it was very, I assume, 18th century. It made your arms go up, which of course is quite right.
The style of the theater costume was very special at that period of time. It was antique. Every costume carried old Roman or Greek elements. My sketches and designs were based on authentic sketches.
Salieri had used social poison.
He just summarized all the, you know, philosophy and tragicomedy in words at the end of the film, you know. And it became, you know, little stagey, little too theatrical. I said, well, isn't this the greatest statement that when he says, my music is growing fainter and fainter, and his, and suddenly we hear the music, and Salieri is suffering. And the door opens and the guy comes in, water closet, professore, you know, and like that. And it worked.
We had the ending visually that appears in the picture. But somehow Milos and I both felt something was missing. I went to Italy, and after I was there 3 to 5 days, I get this call from Milos, I have the ending. And I said, what is it? He said, I'm not going to tell you, you have to come back.
I didn't tell him the whole truth. I needed him and his help because I didn't know how Peter will react.
What he had done was add Mozart's laugh at the end when Salieri is going down.
Well, there it is.
There's something about the film that really touches them deeply. In films all over film houses all over the world, people stay for all of those long, long credits. Did you know that?
Ordinarily, you would take a single album of Mozart, let alone a double album, which that one was, and you would expect young people to buy at most, 5,000 copies of it all over a country, 10,000. And the sales of records of this alone went into millions.
It would have taken us about 2,000 years to reach the audience that we had reached with this film.
Thank God, every chance made this movie.
We were part and parcel of something that was greater than we were, and you can't ask for more.
You can never find the right word to describe any of Mozart's music. He and Shakespeare, I think, between them, justify human evolution.